Hey everybody, welcome back to Hour 2 of School Sucks Live, the School Sucks radio show. We're ready for some phone calls if you want to make them. 843-JOIN-SSP. With me in the studio tonight is Cory.
Hello.
Hey, you enjoying this conversation so far? I think it's terrific.
I think it is terrific.
And we are going to go... Larken, you want to take some calls?
Sure.
All right, we're going to go to Jason in Wisconsin. You are on School Sucks Live. How are you doing tonight?
Yeah, this is Jason calling back.
All right. What's on your mind?
Well, I listened to the show so far, and you guys touched on a wide variety of topics, including evolution. But it seems to me that you're basically saying that, you know, government is bad. I mean, that seems like the gist of it.
Basically. Mm-hmm.
And then you define government in kind of a weird way, I would say. I would say that the definition of a government is whenever you have a society and you try to manage the interactions between the people of the society, that's when you arrive at a government. I mean, you can define it many different ways, but usually when you start defining it any other way, you end up talking about specific forms of government.
Well, I have no problem, and this is something that I started the show with tonight when this conversation began. Oh, my goodness, hold on. Let me bring Larken back into the conversation. Larken, were you able to hear all that?
No, you had me on hold the whole time.
That's too bad. Oh, man.
My answers would be a little better if I know what the question is.
All right, so, Jason, what you're driving at is that you've identified that we're saying government is bad, evil, etc., and that you feel we're not being specific enough about what government is?
No, I think that when you talk about, you know, government being bad, I mean, you can look at a form of a government, and then you can look at its actions or effects, and then you can arrive at a conclusion that that is definitely bad. But when you talk about the concept of a government, like, basically, I would define a government as the management of interactions between the people in some sort of region.
Ooh, so let's say we started calling that governance instead of government, and let's just say, and Larken, you can jump in on this as well, let's just say we start throwing around the idea, we just begin the discussion that one day, with a little bit of work and education and thought and honesty, we could evolve to a point where what is at the center of society does not have to be men with if we want to go over a few thousand years, who had the biggest stones or swords or guns or bombs, or whatever justifications they came up with to rule over other people. But someday at the center of society, we could have an authority that is not person or position based, but based on principles.
Well, I think that that's what we had at the inception of our own government. I mean, since then,
we didn't nearly
radically change.
I have a question. Can you name any government anywhere in the world at any time in history that didn't claim the right to demand money from innocent people under threat of hurting anyone who didn't pay up?
The Indian tribes.
That isn't government. They didn't call it government. It was organization.
Yeah, but it wasn't a government in the sense that, you know, most people like to hold on to nowadays. But if you go back to the definition that I was trying to go with, where whenever you try to manage the interactions of a people in a region, you end up with a government or governance, which is just a different tense of the word. But
it's so much more than that.
Tribe.
It's a fundamentally different thing. There's an interesting exchange that somebody, I forget the other party's name, but it was an exchange between somebody and Thomas Jefferson, who pointed to the Indian tribes and said, you know, they have organization, they have their elders, and most people listen to their elders because they know stuff, but they don't actually have government. And he asked Jefferson, do you think their life would be improved by having a government? And Jefferson said, no, leave them the way they are. Our version of government would not help them. And they didn't call that government. They said they didn't have a government. They have organization. They have people who know stuff. But government, you know, what everybody uses that term is the people with the right to rule, the people who tax us and boss us around.
Well, the chief indeed had, you know, the right to make decisions that affected the entire tribe. So
he had no enforcement power.
He did, and he did in the same mannerisms that you think that this theoretical government that was changes in schooling and stuff that we could arrive to. He didn't coerce people to do the things that he wanted them to do,
right?
But in fact, he used his position of I don't know, honor, or however you want to describe it, to basically, when he made recommendations, they wanted to carry out his will without any coercion.
Right, so he was a leader, not a ruler.
So in a lot of ways, you know, the Indian tribe kind of represents, you know, your ideal form of government.
Well, I think the Indian tribes, because obviously I think it's safe to say that none of us are experts on that subject, so there might have been a variety of degrees of force used from one group of natives to the next in different places at different times. But what we're really focused on here is force. Now, one interesting thing about Native Americans is because it was a civilization that had never been, for lack of a better word, westernized, we can see a look further back in time at how the concept of leadership might have turned into government. Now, this is somewhat theoretical, but I think there's an author named Robert Higgs, with 2 G's, if you want to look him up, who's done some very good research and work on this subject. In the beginning, when you know, people traveled in packs, wandering and gathering, hunting, etc., there would be times when people would have to gravitate to the leadership of the strongest, the most trustworthy. But the thing was, that was always somebody that the people in the tribe put into that position of leadership because they knew that person. That person had proven themselves. They trusted that person. What that morphed into, with respect to even the softest forms of government we have today, those people are complete strangers who have done nothing to earn our trust. In fact, they get into the positions where we can even choose them by constantly violating our trust. So I understand what you're saying, and I want to ask you, what do you think, all the ground we've just covered, what do you think the ideal form of government would be?
Well, when I read the Constitution, I idealize it quite a bit. I mean, there's very few force mechanisms in it. In fact, the only one that really comes to mind is, well, the only 2 that come to mind are the taxation provisions and the war provisions, and the rest of them are actually just like an illusion that was created back starting around 1880 with the advent of corporations. That's when statutes started coming into play, is because now that we had these new entities called corporations, of course the state needed the power to, you know, regulate them. So, you know, you ended up with these statutes, and then we ended up after that basically corporatizing every individual so that these statutes now apply to them, which is a lot of the reasons why, you know, when free men go into the courts, they try to say, you know, I'm not this corporation, which doesn't work, because even the people that understand it, you know, proclaim that, you know, since you use this community, you owe it to the community to kind of abide by their rules. I mean, if you actually look back at even speed limits and that kind of thing, you end up with, that was originally instituted to control commerce of those large trucks, the 18-wheelers.
All right, Jason, we're going to have to put you on hold because we've got to go to a quick break, but we can hang, if you want to hang with us for another segment, we can pick it up. This is School Sucks Live. We'll be back in a couple.
Should you be able to earn an honest living free from senseless government interference?